think we're live now. I need to check YouTube real quick just to make sure.
I should be like, "Hi, mom," but mom's
Yeah.
not watch this.
My mom doesn't even watch my stuff.
Right.
So.
I did have a friend reach out and say that I sounded very intelligent, like I knew what I was talking about on the other podcast, and I was like, "Good, I have you fooled too." Excellent.
Yeah. All right. The biggest. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. I think I heard myself. That was the biggest thing. Is I don't want to record something on YouTube live. You can hear it right now, but we got to get now. We're delayed, so I got to make sure. La
So you
la
can
la 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 la.
you can bleep out if I curse too much or something.
I
That's
don't
why we're
care.
doing delay.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. I think I heard. All right, we're live now. So with that, and we're down to one viewer, unless it's one of y'all, because I am leaving the viewer. But yeah, so this is a live thing. We're ditching what we've done before, which is the new stuff. I might bring the new stuff back, but I need some other. We might do that as a specific segment. I don't know, but this is just a live recording that we're gonna start doing. So I'm gonna go through all my intro. I'm not doing music yet because I was like, I just want to get it set up, and then maybe I'll start piping in music. I'll edit all that in post, but we are gonna jump through the actual intro that I used to do, that I don't do anymore because I just hop on and do a conversation with people. As you know, Ben, it's like we're recording, so anything you say can be used against you. Although I typically take out stuff. Yeah, were we talking about my sighting last time, by the way? Was it you I was talking to you about sighting and the fact that I had I had come inside and yeah.
Yeah, how is the sighting project going? Everybody wants to know.
Yeah, well, one, I'm not dead, which it didn't make it into the podcast, by the way, because so what people don't know is I had siding. HOA was getting on me. It was rust on the side, so I was out there moving siding around to kind of spread the rust out to different parts of the house because it had like a sheen on it, and so I kept getting dinged by the HOA, even though I like scrubbed it. We had painted it, and I was like, you know what? I'm not dealing with any of this because I was getting to the point where they were going to start charging me $50 a month. After I got done with like 80% of it, my neighbor walks over who's on the board and goes, "Oh, all you had to do was show effort, and we would have like just told them to go away and stop bugging you." And I was like, "Yeah,
Thanks for letting me know.
yeah." So, well, I know how to move siding around now, and my violations are all gone, and I got a lot of work out that day. So, but
Silver linings.
Yeah.
Silver linings.
Yeah, it didn't make it into the podcast, but yeah. So an update for you, Ben, because you and I had discussed that last time as it got addressed. But and everyone just heard a very boring. We had two concurrent viewers, and one is left because I started talking about
citing. I was here to listen to SharePoint and how to hack into things.
What is this siding bullshit?
Well, what you have to do with SharePoint is take the siding off of it. And see
right. I was trying to come up with something, Jeffrey, and you beat me to it. I love it. It's just like, yeah. So the siding attack is when you.
I'm tempted to just skip my intro now. I need to for the one live view. We're gonna try it. We're gonna try it out. Maybe I should because I think this would be a great conversation for the start of the podcast. Maybe I'd slip it in afterwards. I don't know. All right. In this episode of the Exploring Information Security Podcast, Unraveling the SharePoint Zero-Day Exploit. This is where the music comes in, so I need a moment of silence so I can cut it. Welcome to the Exploring Information Security Podcast, where you learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I am your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we will be exploring Unraveling the SharePoint Zero-Day Exploit. With me to do that is Ben Miller, a founder of B-Side St. Louis. Also, check out B-Side St. Louis. It is September 27th. Yes. St. Louis, great city.
So much fun.
Love B-Sides events. I did not get accepted. I did get accepted at Greenville, so I'm sorry I'm not going to be at B-Side St. Louis, buddy.
It's okay.
Show notes for this can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. Feedback for the show, timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Rate the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Hit the like button on YouTube because we're on YouTube right now. Also, subscribe to the channel. That really helps it grow. What I like about YouTube is the fact that my RSS feed is through Squarespace, and I'm limited to 100 episodes. So podcasts fall off on podcast platforms. What's great about YouTube now is everything's going to live there forever. So that's why, if you noticed, this past summer had some stuff going on, just kind of re-released some of the older stuff. There's some really good stuff. I went back and listened to a little bit of it, and I was like, man, this is some really good content. And a lot of my stuff is timeless, so you can go to it and still get a lot of the same concepts. Some of it ages, but in general, it's like how to find vulnerabilities, where we talked to Sammy Kamkar, and that's actually been a really popular one. It's one of my favorite interviews because we get into like ones and zeros. And like he talks more theory around like trying to actually find vulnerabilities, because he's, you know, he had the MySpace worm. He got in the news for hacking garage door openers, right? So he knows how to find some of those vulnerabilities, and he talks in digging into it at the ones and zeros level, which is just amazing. But yeah. Again, B-Side St. Louis, they are essentially a sponsor of what is this live podcast, live discussion. We have like a live studio audience for this as well too. So if you're listening to this on a podcast feed, go to meetup.com, where we announce kind of it. This is going to be a third Tuesday of the month still kind of thing. So it's on a regular schedule. It'll be available on YouTube. You can go to the new community tab on exploresec.com and sign up there we have a listserv of about 200 people, which I'm going to try to be more active in and promoting stuff. But then what's great about the listserv too is you get added to the invite for the Google Meetup. And so you can actually hop in the Google Meetup and join the other InfoSec professionals, where we're going to have a conversation about this. Obviously, Ben's the special guest, so we'll talk about the SharePoint Zero-Day that hit, what was it? It was the end of July or beginning of August?
Well, yeah, the timeline is one of those interesting things. It got big in July, let's put it that way. It's been known a little bit before that, but it became a thing because it got added to the CISA list. And you pointed out on your blog really, really well, kind of the timeline of things. But if you go back, it was in the Pwn to Own in May 25, and the code was released. And so it was like, yeah, it was known. And it's one of those, you never know how many people know about something until it becomes big like this. And so doing your own intelligence gathering on it is one of the things that I wanted to bring up. And, you know, I am definitely not a ones and zeros, how to find vulnerabilities type person, but what to do with them once the crap hits the fan, that's, you know, my bread and butter. So.
Well, I think you're right. Like a lot of this stuff comes out, and then either Microsoft or somebody decides not to fix it, and then attackers start using it or figure out a novel way of using it. Because this was what was it called, like Tool Shed?
So Tool Shell, because Tool Pane is the piece of SharePoint that it's a really goofy authentication bypass, which are my favorite kinds of attacks. You know, you basically get in by saying, no, I was already in. It's literally social engineering to the computer. It's like, I was already inside, let me in. And you just figure out a way to request that. And that's what this researcher did. And then it's like, oh, I can do so much worse now. And then you get the extra pieces of the persistence of I'll sell your, you know, I'll get your keys off the machine, and then I can just come back whenever I want to. You know, I've now got the master password to the building, kind of thing. Even when you change the locks on the door, I can still get in some of the other background ways through the sewers or whatever. My analogies get out of control. Sorry, live audience.
No, we've already talked about siding and tool shed, so your analogies are going to fit in very well.
Yeah. So yeah, this one was so weird, kind of how it came about, and that's why it caught my attention, you know, when you and I were talking about setting things up. And it's just, I love these kind of things. It reminds me of, again, from a hacker perspective, doing things in a way they weren't intended to be done, or tools in a way they weren't intended to be used. This is literally like a weird extra piece to the logic of a page in the background. And if you go read the original blog, which is like cybersecurity.com, is the guy who wrote it. I don't even want to say the name because I'm pretty sure that I'm going to say it wrong. But underscore L0GG on Twitter, no matter what you call it, you can find all this stuff. And he goes, or they, I don't even know, goes really in depth on the work that it takes to find these type of vulnerabilities. And then it's a whole nother blog to be like, and here's why you need to be worried and how to fix it. And that was where digging into the exact logic, it's a deserialization request, authentication bypass, cryptographic key stealing chain of exploits. Like those are just one part of the overall fun that is information security, the finding it. Then there's the exploiting it. Then there's the weaponizing it. Then there's the defending it from it. Then there's the how do you build a security culture so that this doesn't even, your CISA doesn't have to wake up late at night and be like, do we have this fixed? You can just, reply back to an email and say, oh yeah, no, we patched that the day that the patch came out. We were already prepared for it. We weren't even we weren't even worried about it because we had these extra capabilities in place, so that our SharePoint servers were never this easy to get into from the internet. You had to be on our VPN in our other network, walled garden. So this was never even an attack that could affect us. That's where I want to be as a security professional, is prepared ahead of time. You can't be all the time, but that's the ideal place. And for this one in particular, it was like, okay, we're going to go after everybody who's not just behind the curve, but way behind the curve as far as patching, internet access, and remediation capabilities.
Well, this was a on-prem thing, right? So if you're not using an on-prem server, then
so define on-prem for me again. Is it your on-prem if it's in a co-located data center? Like it's not as
yeah. It's in a server. It's not using Microsoft's cloud.
Right, in Microsoft's official cloud. But if you lift and shifted all your stuff, including your on-prem SharePoints from back in the day, to Azure, you might have still had some of this stuff live.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like
server. Yes, if you're administering your own SharePoint server. Yeah.
So you start using phrases like on-prem, and people are like, well, we have everything in the cloud. Okay, but is it their cloud configured their way, or is it your cloud that somebody hopefully configured correctly? And do you know for sure? And especially if you're talking manager, director, VP, CISO level, does anybody at your business know for sure anymore? Or did we just lay off everybody this year that might have done that project 12 years ago and we don't know anymore? How's your documentation retention, guys? Yeah, this is, but yeah, the main one of this is the again, old school, older type setup. You're finding these people on the internet, and if you're connected to the internet, this kind of stuff is going to be found. If you look at the Cloudflare blog, it showed when everybody started sending the traffic in July 22nd at 10 a.m. It's like when the news hit, because it went from less than 50,000 hits to above 300,000 hits, like in an hour. Like, oh, this is the new way to scan for this. Boom, everybody connected on the internet tried to get everybody connected on the internet exploited. And that's just how easy it is, right? Like, you don't have to, I could go.
No, that's the point, is for you to just go on and on about this, because it's diving into, right? Like you said, you get keys and stuff. So they're also saying, one, you not only have to patch, you have to rotate everything, which talk about being
how good's your detection on whether or not you got prompt? You had, if you've got Cloudflare, you've got WAF, you've got some logs of, oh, we got the request that could have let somebody in. Did somebody get in? How do you know? Well, did any of this extra stuff happen? Do we have logs on that? Do you have people looking for that kind of stuff? I mean, again, the what do you call it? Right of bang is what I've heard it called. After the exploit, that's when you've got precious seconds to try and figure out if something went wrong. And if you don't have a good setup already in place for that kind of logging and a little bit of attribution and being able to figure out what happened, the log wrote, maybe the log was set up and the server is kind of dying, and so they set the logs to overwrite each other every 24 hours. And yeah, did something happen that day? No clue. Especially when you're talking old school on-prem SharePoint server in somebody's closet, that mom and pop shop, no idea, didn't even know they set up a SharePoint server when they set up the share system between Outlook calendars and whatnot, and it's all interconnected, which is what's really scary about this kind of vulnerability, right? Like, you find a weird vulnerability in some bespoke web app that very few people use, and it's not tied to anything else. Cool. You don't get as much money from something like Pwn2Own for finding those vulnerabilities, but they're out there. That's one of my not even claim to fame, claim to slight knowledge, was finding a bug way back 2011. That was, basically the same kind of bypass of just like, no, I'm already logged in. Let me in. And that was really fun. That's a story for a different day. That's more Chronister's story than mine. He tells it better because he makes fun of me while he does it. But this one, SharePoint, like you start looking under the hood, even in modern day Azure, a lot of file sharing and data sharing capabilities is SharePoint under the hood. And it really hasn't changed that much in 10, 15 more years. And you get this, and it's just like, oh man, I forgot that server was there. I forgot we gave this permissions to the system account 10 years ago, 3 CISOs ago, maybe more. And it's these dug in vulnerabilities that it just takes one little problem, and you don't know how nasty it's going to get. Log4j was bad enough, but at least you knew it was these type of servers. Once you've got keys and access to systems like SharePoint, you can touch so much more that, getting an entrenched intruder out of your systems at that point, you almost have to burn it to the ground. It's not quite as bad as a golden ticket on your Active Directory system, but it's pretty close. And it takes a lot of effort. And I don't know that most businesses are staffed to handle that kind of intrusion. What was the one I was reading just before we got online? Workday just admitted they got a big breach. And it's like, okay, so they found out there was a breach. Do they really know how bad it is? I've done just enough forensics to be like, no, you never know how bad it really was.
Well, it seems like some of that. I mean,
that's think you got it cleaned up, and you're really hoping.
Yeah, I mean that one is a little bit. I think that's a little bit more just gaining information. It seems like they're going after all the Salesforce and the Workday stuff, and really a lot of that's just more sales information, right? So that they have, and they can create phishing into other, I guess with Workday, it's like their actual thing, but that would mean that it's their actual sales team talking to their clients, right? They're getting their client information, which then goes to those Workday clients and then gets into their environment. And then it's like but
if I get a little bit of Workday systems and I do, some internal phishing between systems, and then I've got some Workday credentials, and then I've got some Workday access, how many of our paychecks are all going through Workday? Like, yeah.
Yeah. To me, I guess it kind of depends, because I'm thinking Workday is more like Salesforce, but I think Workday is more like a ServiceNow, right? Where you're going to have a lot of those processes and internal. I mean, and that's what a lot of these guys are after, is internal, like you said, with getting back to the SharePoint stuff, right? It's internal documents that can be used, or I'm trying to find it right now. I read on risky.biz, their bulletin newsletter. I want to see the numbers, because I thought they had come out with like how many people had been actually compromised by it. But CISA, I did see CISA found web shells being left on SharePoint and DLLs and other files in that SharePoint environment. Like you said, you can one, you have to patch a vulnerability. Two, you have to rotate the keys. But now you then have to go hunt for all these processes. Did those get executed? Is there now a backdoor under SharePoint server to get back into the environment?
Because one of the things I always used to do and used to teach clients when I was pen testing is like, okay, I got my initial access. I'm going to set up like 3 or 5 more accesses, just so that when you find that one, because somebody's going to find something at some point, I've still got other ways back in. And I would always show this is how you look for it. But so many businesses that I was encountering then, and even today with some of my communication amongst peers, and you do the information sharing amongst industry groups, dude, nobody's got, unless you're a huge company with lots of money and the intent to spend it, you're not going to have internal threat hunters just constantly looking for new ways to do certain things. You don't have your network configured for full egress inspection to make sure that you're not allowing remote access Trojan tool stuff out. People just don't have the time and don't have the money, and definitely don't have the expertise. And the more I'm talking about this, the more like I'm internally scaring myself and trying to remember that, okay, there is this whole part of, and I am not a threat hunter by any stretch of imagination. I am not a threat analyst of like, these are your forces at work outside that are trying to get in and why they're trying to get in and all of that. All I know is anything worth collecting for a business to make money is worth stealing, and sometimes easier for the people who know how to steal stuff properly. So it's not that you need to be, you don't have to be Fortune 100 or Fortune 10 even to be worth trying to break into. And it's kind of that old neighborhood adage of, you want to lock your door so that it's just, you're not letting just anybody who, happens to be trying for unlocked doors to get in. And this is one of those things that, there's so many of these advisories and so many of these vulnerabilities. Keeping up on it is a whole full-time job, and you either need to outsource it to somebody who does that full-time, your MSSPs, your cloud companies, stuff like that, or you better have somebody internally who cares just as much about your business and keeping your business in place as they do keeping up on all of this stuff.
Yeah, I think the world is kind of, or I guess a lot of organizations are moving to MSSPs, which is, for people that don't know what MSSPs are, it's essentially how I view it in a very, very low level or high level term, is like it's your first level for a SOC, right? They're the ones doing and then sending it to you. And I imagine you can do any sort of level as far as like how much they're taking. They can take action on stuff for you. And even, I would say, even a lot of the MSSPs, they have their big clients, but then there are several MSSPs focused on small to medium business specifically to account for that kind of stuff. So,
oh yeah, it's if you're a hacker looking for a first job and a little bit of experience, great place to go work is somebody's managed security service provider, MSSP, SOC, Security Operations Center. Just in case people didn't know all the acronyms, I try to remember to say them once before I use the acronym, but it's Tuesday night. But yeah, those are good places to go work because you will just see stuff. Just like I want hackers that have done help desk, I want hackers that have done SOC work and just seen how weird the world can be, and then you can level up and become a researcher like this person and find these problems by just going out and being like, wonder what that does. Wonder what that does. And eventually you find, oh, if I send it with this and these flags, then it just lets me in. And then I send these extra, trying to go back to the actual breakdown that we said we were doing.
But see, pen testing is going to get automated, man. So if you want to get into pen testing, good luck.
Are you saying that just to see, like, my little vein is going to come out here, man?
A little bit, but I'm coming around to the idea. I'm like you, like, no, you need a person, but it's like we already have some automated tools, right? You got Burp, you got Zap to do a lot of, like,
so automated tools, absolutely needed and useful. And what I will tell you can get automated, and we won't talk about my previous employer and what they're working on and what I got to play with. You can automate controls verification. You can automate response and signal automation. But you cannot automate, or at least if you try to automate a bad process for finding problems and seeing what happens, all you're going to do is do more bad work faster. I remember, back when I was starting out in the early 2000s, magicpentest.com. I am not checking it. I hope they're not still around. They were offering pen tests for $100, and it was an in-map scan. Here's the tool output. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of things you can automate, and maybe they're even useful for certain companies. But you are never, and I will, again, flush. You will never automate a person thinking through what happens when, trying it and seeing what happens and finding out what actually happens when. You can do your chaos engineering, you can do controls verification, you can throw crap against the wall and watch it splatter, but you're never going to have a cool pen test report that says, this is what we did, this is what worked, this is the general ideas of how to fix it. That requires human intelligence, human direction, and there's just too many variables. I consider it much more like weather forecasting. Too many variables to get perfect all the time.
Yeah. I think I'm just saying, I think there's some human element, but that it's like, I think the number of pen test jobs, like, you're gonna have to really stand out, which
absolutely
doing already. But
friend of mine who just got a new pen test job literally had to do a 2-week pen test engagement as his debut for the company. That was his interview process. So if you're not ready to do start to finish create some exploits, write a really good report, yeah, it's going to get a lot. You're not going to get hired just because you got an OSCP and a CEH. You were never going to get hired just because you had a CEH, I hope, unless you're U.S. government. But whole other problem. So yeah, you need to be able to do a lot more. But again, the thing, and we're into my career advice that I try not to give unless you're at my conference and ask me personally. You will always find work to do making security needs make sense to the business. If you can do that, if you're willing to understand a business and you're willing to be an expert in security, you'll get laid off, but you'll always find another job. There's always going to be a need for that, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
Yep. So getting back to the why we're here, which is the SharePoint,
Yeah.
Zero-Day,
So did you go to that blog? Here, I'll post it in chat.
Yeah, please post that in chat. We'll grab that, put it in the show notes.
So yeah, this is again, you take a stab at saying the person's name, but that was the blog that I found the most detail on that they wrote up, or he or she, whoever. And yeah, it walks you through. Here's what I looked at. I love the little graphic. One request, RCE, remote code execution. A picture of an iceberg. Took over a year with multiple bypasses to figure this out, because that's how it works. You don't find cool stuff like this just by luck. But yeah, you find a page, you find a way to request the page, code. I am not a developer by any stretch of imagination, but literally, if the referrer headout is sign out path flag 7 set to true, it'll pass the check. You're literally sending a thing that says, no, I'm good. And the server, because of logic and what's how do they refer to it? Web page. Let's see. Further down, user must be authenticated. But if we make our request, it'll fail to load, and then you invoke it before the load event, and links to deep learning.microsoft.com links, which is again, a friend of mine said a long time ago. He said, if you want to be really, really good. What he learned from somebody who does work like this is he was talking about watching Dota game matches over the weekend, and the person that he was being mentored by said, yeah, I was on learn.microsoft.com reading KB articles about how stuff works under the hood. It's like, so if you want to be that person, pick your stuff you want to do. But anyway, literally, he gets to the point where he's like, all right, we call the stack this way. And it lets us in. And it's beautiful. Like, I am not an expert at webpartpages.toolpane.oninit and all the ASPX. Like, that's a language that's always been over my head. But it's really, we just somehow it includes a query string, so we have to append the parameter this, and it bypasses the check. It all comes down to, and I'm really big on let's make it as simple as possible. It all comes down to this request says, are you authenticated? And there's a way to make it say to itself, yeah, they're authenticated. Like your Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd getting around how the logic is supposed to work. And that's just, some coder wrote it in such a way that the time of check versus the time of use was off. And that's how these bugs happen. And they happen all the time. And it just takes time to find them, break them down like this, and figure out the way to get around it.
So is this so is this an actual vulnerability, or is this more of like a bug, logic flaw? Like, what is it?
It's both. So it is a vulnerability in the system. It's a thing that can be exploited. And so the actual bug comes down to how it passes this data around. That's why it's a authentication bypass by a serial deserialization. But yeah, that's where if you get down to, the web part v2 format has more functionality, but it'll check the user's permission in. So the bug is in the getting the piece and not checking it when you should, and then the system just letting you move on from there. So that's the auth bypass. Is it a vulnerability? Is it this type of bug? Is it that type of bug? It's a vulnerability and it's this type of bug. Which again,
so it's not a logic flaw, because for example, a logic flaw would be a retail company, you being able to check out a a coupon over and over again, right? That's not necessarily a vulnerability, but it's a logic flaw. So that like
I'd argue that it is a vulnerability that
well,
things not happening, but it is the logic flaw type vulnerability. Yes.
okay, gotcha. So deserialization, what is that? Like, because I've heard that before. I knew a pen tester. He worked for me. That was his jam, man. He loved finding this deserialization vulnerability. Like, what is that? Like, how do you exploit it?
So when you're passing, and this is not a developer's way of explaining it. This is how I've broken into stuff before. When data gets passed around in weird ways, a lot of times you're translating it between different things. Humans are reading in English or whatever language. The website is in HTML or ASPX and whatnot. When it's getting run at the system level, it's running in C#, and then it gets translated in memory to hex and down to the ones and zeros. When you put the data together in certain ways, it is serialized. When you translate it from that serialized input and output into something else, it is deserialized. And just like, we've all Googled in one language and then taking what we said in the other language and reversed it in Google Translate, right? And it comes out wonky, same problem. Things don't match up quite right. And when things don't match up quite right in serialization and deserialization, bugs, something you can take advantage of.
So how easy is this, like, to actually exploit?
So easy to exploit. Anything that somebody can point to a GitHub or a Metasploit shell or a Metasploit module is easy to exploit. Really hard to find. The way you find these is by doing a bunch of just blasting data, throwing stuff against the wall, and seeing how it breaks, and then finding a way to make it break in the way that you want it to. So once it's script kiddied, weaponized, put into Metasploit, POC code written by somebody like this and put out on GitHub, super easy to exploit. That's why you see the graph that Cloudflare had. But finding it and making an exploit out of it is what I consider super hard. On the scale of super hard to impossible, without being a genius, this one is on the easier scale. But there's a reason why the guy, when he did Pwn to Own, he showing this and showing how it worked in a trusted way, he got $100,000 for that. Or they did, I should say, this person. That's a good, how much work do you do over a year to get $100,000 worth of money?
Well,
it's pretty hard.
I would imagine you spend a lot of time, researching this kind of thing. I mean, it is a 9.8, but just from a, like, if you get to one of these servers, right? Like, what are you actually doing to exploit this vulnerability? Is this just finding some input to put a bunch of code in? Is that what it is?
It's literally sending a web request with the right referrer on it to the server that reads it properly and says, okay, cool, you can have everything.
Yeah, because this is unauthenticated too, which is usually what you get with a 9.8. It's remote code execution, so it sounds to me, and it doesn't require any user interaction too. So that to me, whenever it says, I guess the new term is zero click, which means essentially you send them an email and it just loads whatever's in the email, and then
because the interaction is not the human at the end of the keyboard. The interaction is with the system that's accepting the request, even translating it, even reading it, accepting the request, which if it's a server on the internet and I can just submit requests, then these are the in my opinion, these are the fun ones. To zero click, no user input required. Like, I don't have to get you to click the thing that says, hey, the Excel document needs to be open and you give me admin access to your system. I have to trick you. This is, you've got a server out there on the internet and somebody sends it this link because it's accepting web traffic so that people can view it. It's my server now. I am now authenticated and I am acting as that system. So and when you have that kind of capability on a system, not a user system, but a web server or something like that, just depending on how it's set up in the enterprise, I may have everything I need now to just end your business. I may have the ability to just run some commands and delete it all if I wanted to, install some ransomware, find whatever business secrets make you your business and put them out there for everybody else to read just as a ha-ha. At that point, the phrase that I always used to use with clients is, it's my server now. Like, you don't have control over it.
What
It's
is that meme? All your bases are belong to me.
well, yeah, that's the old meme. I thought you were going to pull the Somalian pirates meme guy, but yeah, the old
Oh,
one.
look at me,
all
I'm the
the
captain
big
now.
ones
Yeah, you could do that one too. Yeah, yeah.
that meme might have gotten included in some reports and then told to get pulled out of reports. Apparently, pen test reports, the companies, when they've paid you for the pen test reports, are not supposed to have memes on them. I only had to be told about 5-10 times. But it makes the point. You know, these people like memes too. Everybody likes memes. I'm in a business.
Yeah. You don't think? I mean, I do try to tailor my presentations towards the audience. I am a little bit more careful with executives. I have presented many years ago to executives of the local state government, and I used the Admiral Akbar. It's a trap for a phishing thing. It actually worked out because next day I had the head of HR calling me, yelling it's a trap into the phone. So it actually, I feel like, it's you have to get the reference, right? And I was like,
yes.
Star Wars is a 1970s, 80s movie. Anybody in executive has seen Star Wars. Like everybody nowadays is, even at the executive level, should have seen Star Wars, unless they're really just not that into it. But
there are some people out there, man. You said it perfectly. You got to know your audience. There are boards that, yes, I would totally just roll up with my normal meme deck. There are several audiences where it's like, no, we got to pull this out.
You got to tone it back. Put all the bullet points back in the slide.
So yes, I think a better explanation, going back to things, if you look at there's a heading in that blog, data set, surrogate, selector, insecure deserialization. This is the more fun part that talks to
your screen.
Point.
Like, are you, because you're pointing to stuff. And I think you can present on this and show your
screen. I can share my screen. Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
We will share just the Chrome tab rather than all.
People need to learn.
I don't have anything too scary pulled up.
Well, I was thinking of that, and I was pulling it up trying to follow along, and I was like, why don't I just have him do it?
Yeah, why don't I just pay for that? Yeah. So yeah, this is the, and I'm not even going to try and explain all of this, but this is the part we were talking about insecure deserialization. When you throw these functions, well-known gadget in why so serial. Again, I didn't, Microsoft even names these things in a goofy, because is that a Why So Serious reference to Dark Knight?
I would think so.
It might not be. You never know.
These are developers, man. They sneak stuff into their code all the time.
All the time. Because nobody's going to read. That's a phrase I've heard way too much in my career. Nobody's actually going to look at this. Nobody's actually going to read this stuff. Like, yeah, I am. I'm trying to get a $100,000 Pwned competition win. Yeah, it's literally string serialization. String serialization. We don't do nulls. And then we validate it. And if you throw exceptions not in the allowed list, that's when problems. Okay. But if we throw some of these, which is a whole bunch of different types of data, SQL int 32, int 64, SQL money, blah, blah, blah. If you can control the type, then we can do kind of standard, again, translating between things, XML, deserialization, serialization problem. And what he did that was really cool. So notice again, I spent months on this to bypass the check. Yeah. Overnight success takes 15 years.
I love the next sentence too, right? And that's something that if you're getting in this space, you need to understand is I learned how XSD and XDR schemas are constructed. So he had to go to Microsoft documentation and understand like how some of this stuff works, so you can actually know how to actually exploit it properly.
Correct. And that's for developing the exploit. I can just read his blog, and again, there's proof of concept code out there that I'm not going to link to, and just be like, oh, this is what we do, and I throw it at my favorite enemy's web servers, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But to develop it, yeah, I learned how this works. I didn't give up. One day, suddenly, inspiration, parse assembly qualified name. Read this part carefully. I'm not going to read this part carefully. I've read it carefully like 4 times. It's still over my head. So this is just imagine, this is again with memes, SpongeBob, several days later, 1 month later, some cool stuff happens. It checks whether it's a comma or brackets, and then it returns it. But if we don't, it lets me add some stuff in. and this is, again, the computers do, and I've said this about developers too. Developers code what you tell them to code, not what you want them to code. Computers run instructions that they are told to run, not what you meant for them to run, not what you want them to run, but what they're told to run. So, doesn't modify the content that we passed. I now have control of when I'm passing this XML validator, and that allows me to invoke this. And that's where, and again, I am breezing through this so we can continue talking about the ramifications thereof.
Yeah.
We found a way to bypass this piece and that piece. Now we do the hard part of connecting things together. And again, lots of cool stuff. I've read through this several times. It's more than I know. So they previously patched this. So you talked about 0-day earlier. 0 days when you break it, there's no patches. So the specific way that they found was not patched, but it relied on, hey, look, this part was patched. So now I can read this, I can look at this, how they fixed it, go back for everything that's not patched, and be able to say, oh, they fixed it this way. So if I do this on the old stuff that's still broke, that's not patched, Bob's your Uncle, Fanny's your aunt, ha ha ha. This is another piece too. None of us work in a vacuum. Oh, hey, look, I can borrow this guy's code and add it to my code and make it do stuff it wasn't intended to do too. If you try to do this all solo cowboy, life is going to be harder. There's always somebody else who's looked at it and just hasn't used it the way that you're using it. Scroll. There's what happens. Decompress a string and we deserialize what's going on in the table. We give it the data that we want. It translates it badly. Ta-da. That's what serialization, deserialization comes down to. It's I put data in a place and make it call data that it didn't intend to because it didn't translate it properly. All right.
Gotcha.
Chaining things together. That's when we get unauthenticated attacker, remote code execution with one request.
Yeah.
Blog post with minions.
Yeah, go down to the request looks like, and I know people that are listening to this aren't going to be able to see this, but I'm just curious what it. Yeah. Okay.
So it's literally here's a post command. Let me translate for those of you here. Let me paint a picture for our listeners. This is what every web request, when you go to google.com or Exploring Information Security or bsidessdl.org plug, you send a request, a GET request, and it sends you back usually a post. When you go under the hood, you can F12 and play with your browser settings, or you can use something like Burp Suite. You can say, instead of requesting data from the server, I'm going to send the server data. So this is a post request to a very specific website tool on the SharePoint server, toolpane.aspx with some extra pieces. And then there's a really crazy, it's not even that crazy encrypted. You send it a payload that has some numbers in it, and it says, hey, do it this way, please. And then it's your server. That's literally all this is saying. You're pointing it at one thing and saying, see, I'm already logged in over here. You're not, but you're saying you are. And that lets you then start to access the server as if you are authenticated.
Gotcha. And that's where, I was reading through some other stuff. There's an IAS module that was getting loaded on. So yeah, once you have access, you can kind of do whatever you want on those servers.
Yep. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and you'd like to think that people have either, I don't know, one, we said the SharePoint is on the internet. It's like, we still have stuff on the internet. Like, this also really reminds me of like on-prem Exchange. Like, one, you really shouldn't be using it. Two, why is it on the internet?
Sometimes there are, you and I are saying, well, you really shouldn't be using it. But for some businesses, it makes sense.
Get it.
They've had it for 20 years. It's working. It's still working. Why should I upgrade? Why should I do something else? I try to understand from that business point of view. Somebody's doing that for a while. One of the jobs I had was running security for a small cloud company, and I lovingly referred to most of our customers as server huggers. They wanted to know where their servers, their data was. And because I could send them a picture of our little tiny data center in a cave in central Missouri, they were really proud it was in a cave. They were like, yeah, I don't trust those Azure people or those Amazon people. I trust Ben and the cave. And I'm like, not sure that's a great idea, but thanks. And yeah, it meets their business need. But the thing that I hope people get to, later on is, and if they read this or somebody talks to them, I still explain this to people that, they're my mother still writes paper checks, and I'm just like, I want them to understand that, okay, if it works for you, it works for you, but understand the different. It's not that you have less risk, it's that you have different risk. That paper check has your bank account and routing number written on it. Guess what I can do with that? And she's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, that's how they work. It's like your credit card. If you use a virtual credit card and you're monitoring it better, way more control and different risk profile. But it's electronic payment and cash only and gold standard. And it's like, no, no, no. But yeah, and so it meets the need, and be mindful of the things, no matter what you're using. What could go wrong with it?
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of follow on that a little bit and say, that use case that people have. You can say I want to be in the Microsoft cloud. Let's say I'm on Microsoft SharePoint.
Mm-hmm.
There's benefits to that. They got the patches for this early, right? That's why it was fixed for them, because they already know that. They didn't have the patches to get out to people yet. But the flip side of that is you also are doing their beta testing for them. And features that they roll out to SharePoint that they don't tell you are coming, right? Google does that as well. They turned on a number of DLP things out of nowhere, and all of a sudden alerts started pouring in about Chinese driver's license numbers, right? So it's a flip side of things, and sometimes you don't want to take the risk of those new features being introduced, not having control of that environment. And so you just have to make sure you balance that and go through the right processes of trying to get things done.
Yes. And the thing that I always try to tell people, especially the newbies, the interested people that are trying to get connected to security that come to B-sides, it's like, yeah, you're the one who's interested in the ones and zeros and the this is how the request looks like that we shared on the screen. Your boss just wants to keep the lights on and everybody paid and the business making money. So know what you want to know and learn it, but then be able to say, hey boss, I know that it's scary for us to do this patch maintenance and we have to turn the systems off for an hour and people get mad about that, but that's way faster than fixing a ransomware attack or Microsoft pushing patches to us that we didn't intend to because it's an emergency now instead of us controlling the downtime. And the thing that I like to tell people is we're just advisors. We're just trying to help them make a better decision about risk by virtue of us knowing how this all works. And if you take that kind of mindset, again, with the whole layoffs discussion and, will there be pen testers in the future? Yes. If you can explain that, you're way less likely to get replaced. Or if you are, you're likely to land fast afterwards because somebody else is going to need you when you're on the wrong spreadsheet at the other place of business. So.
Well, and I don't think pen testers are going away entirely, but I think there's going to be less opportunity. There's already not as many opportunities, and to me, there's just a lot of bad pen test companies that hopefully just get replaced by agentic.
MagicPentest.com, agentic AI pentest.com. Ooh, let me pull up domain. Let me see if that's a.
That's a meetup for another time.
Can I buy it faster than? Oh, can't be reached. 1 second. Let me go to network systems.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how long do you think this vulnerability will be around? Like, how long do you? Because this is one that you put in. I feel like this is one pen testers put in the toolkit, and if they go, "Hey, I found a, on-prem SharePoint server,
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna try this exploit.
It's in my tool. It's one of those things that you're always like, oh, I didn't find anything interesting. Nothing else is working. Hey, any SharePoint servers around here? Let's go look for it. Back in the day, it was your MS08067, which I still have memorized because that was an XP vulnerability that came out like 2007, 2000. I can't even remember. I was still finding it in 2015. I'm pretty sure there's places that are still vulnerable to it because XP was the greatest operating system of all time, and it just didn't. Some people are never going to go away from it. Some things never go away.
Yeah, I had Mubix to dive into that one, and he's like, even when we recorded, he's like, yeah, I'm still finding it.
Oh, Yeah, and you stumble over it is what's really funny. It's like, oh, I didn't even realize there was a server in that closet. Oh, and it's running XP.
So this is going to be around for a long time. I mean,
As long as
hopefully.
there's SharePoint, there's
Yeah,
going to be
well,
this bug.
CIS is getting a little aggressive with the hey, you got to patch all your stuff like now, right? Didn't they have like an Exchange one recently, or was this the SharePoint one that they were like you should patch? Was it SharePoint or this one? Yeah, okay. So I feel like
And it's, again, same people as what I was talking about with the cloud system. Some people are going to patch because they actually listen and they actually care. Some people are going to make the business decision that it's too much of a risk to change how we do things, and they're just going to choose not to. And their disaster plan is hopes and prayers, and good luck. Dude, those people are out there. You and I both, know they are.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, it's in a binder somewhere. We put our plan in a binder. Bend over and yeah.
yeah. Where would you rank this as far as large scale vulnerabilities that kind of popped up? So I'm thinking Log4j, Heartbleed, the Hafnium stuff with Exchange, like we talked about. Like, where would you rank this up there?
So I will put it under both of those you mentioned, but it's a contender. The main thing with Log4j and Heartbleed was just open source and free
And
versus
Linux
something somebody
based.
paid for at some point.
Yeah.
And SharePoint, somebody actually paid for it at some point and put it in on purpose instead of just like, oh, are we running an Apache server? Yeah, you're running an Apache server. Are we running Log4j? Who knows? Those developers just added stuff in to the website. We don't know. Oh crap, we are. So yeah, you're gonna. It's not quite as bad as those, but it's Microsoft is kind of a big deal. They're in a lot of businesses, and like I was saying, this is one of those things that even if you don't have a SharePoint team and you don't intentionally run SharePoint, most of your internal Windows server data sharing capabilities are SharePoint under the hood. A bunch of your team stuff, SharePoint under the hood. What are some of the other ones I'm trying to think of? Your Power BI, some of your other business
Yeah, but
analytics stuff.
a
A
lot
lot.
of those aren't on prem though, too. Though a lot of those are in
True,
services within Microsoft's online offering.
true. But I'm going to make a bet that if this is still in some of this on-prem stuff, give
Oh,
it another
sure.
couple of years, find something like
I
it.
mean,
And that
it's
so it won't be
probably
this
integrated. I
CVE.
mean, like you said, the reason why they have this around is because someone said like jerry rigged something for the SharePoint server to help run, me working in healthcare like an EMR or something else.
Oh,
And if we take this offline, it's going to break our, like you said, business, right? So it's probably tied into something dumb somewhere. It's going to be. So it's probably like you said, it's going to be around for for a while, because especially at this point, I think a lot of people are moving more towards like a cloud based
yeah.
offering for a lot of stuff, but there's still I've been in organizations where it's like, yeah, we know this is an issue, but there's nothing we can do about it at this point because it's a $20 million fix, right? And it's like the
Yep.
business has decided not to fix this yet until they're forced to do it. So
Yeah, until something happens and they're forced to do it
mhm.
by virtue of fines, or they just they fix the vulnerability by going out of business and their servers are turned off. Sometimes that happens. It sucks, but it does happen. Businesses go under because of stuff like this. It just doesn't make the news the same way that the critical vulnerability does. And yeah, I think you're going to keep finding this. I think you're going to find, and the more important stuff too is this CVE, maybe someday it dies, like MSO 8067. But how this works, these kind of basic bugs that are in your infrastructure stuff that you don't even know to look at a bunch of times, that is never going to go away.
Mhm.
Your business is always going to be focused on new feature, next quarter, what can we push out? And a lot of times, tech debt stuff like this just kind of gets pushed under and pushed under, hopes and dreams, until something really bad happens, or until you can translate the risk into something business focused. Of guys, these are all the other people that have gotten popped this way. Maybe we should take the time to fix it. Let's schedule a patch maintenance that we didn't want to, but we need to, and do things that way. So
The what's interesting too is I feel like this is not rare, but I feel like a lot of threat vectors have moved away from vulnerability, like exploitation, and it's more about social engineering this day and age. So this is also a a unique scenario in the fact that someone found something that was like easily exploitable, which doesn't occur as much as it used to. And I feel like there's a cycle. I kind of wonder if we're going to start seeing more of this stuff come back around again, where people are starting to exploit vulnerabilities because the social engineering just isn't getting them where they need to
I want to challenge your assumption about one part there. Are we actually, is there more social engineering going on, or are we getting better at detecting it and stopping it than we ever have been? I think that's what's happening.
No. In my view, I feel like people have gotten better at patching, and that means that there's less opportunity for vulnerabilities. Now, does not include networking equipment, because I feel like I read about new networking equipment on a weekly basis.
Nobody patches networking equipment.
Right, but outside of networking equipment, right? It seems like, and that's on the edge too. Like this is a scenario where you're exploiting it, one, if you're inside, or it's been put on the internet past the networking firewall. But I feel like people have gotten better at patching this, at least also getting off the internet a lot of their stuff and putting controls around that kind of stuff. So I think attackers have absolutely shifted to more social engineering, leveraging scatter spider. They're also really good at it too. I think so. I think it's just I honestly think it's a good thing. And if we're doing a better job from a security standpoint overall, right, that we're actually patching our stuff better. Actually, here you go. There you go, people. Patch your shit. This is from Parameter Security. It's a pin I have. I got some stickers too.
And I happen to know that is the old logo because it still has a dude sitting on the toilet. The new logo does not involve that anymore because that was deemed a bridge too far. We were talking about know your audience, and for some of the audience of that. The new patches, the new stickers that say patch your shit do not have.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that people have started patching. Not to say there's not stuff still out there and stuff like this, but I think that's why I think, and also too you can get access into people's systems. I think can potentially be easier you're going to get more access. You're going to be harder to detect. There's a lot of advantages to that.
I will again challenge your state. I don't know that we've gotten better at patching, but we've outsourced who has to patch so much to the vendors and the cloud companies that it's not that you and I at the hospital or whoever is doing the patching and has to manage all that. SCC server can die or SCCM can die. It's all in the cloud and they're patching it for me. That's on the vendor. It's a contract thing now instead of something I have to pay somebody to do. And I think that has improved a lot. And then, MFA is required in a lot more places. So social engineering is harder until I find the MFA bypass.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is they're finding ways around? Like there's this. I was reading about everyone's like phishing resistant MFA. Some of these new terms just annoy me because now what they're doing is they're just downgrading. Now there's not an actual vulnerability in the FIDO keys or the UV keys or whatever. They're just downgrading the attack so it's not useful and saying, hey, go back to text message, go back to your authenticator and just approve me in, right? So it's not in that, but that also means the attackers are always going to find a way in. And
I agree.
And I think humans are, I hate saying this, the weakest link in it, but they're easy manipulated. And what I tell people too is I've been manipulated. Everyone's been manipulated into doing something they don't want to do.
We're talking about a story about that?
Huh?
Yeah, you want to know somebody who does social engineering for a living, who has done that multiple times. My shtick used to be I'm the IT guy, and people were like, "Yeah, you're the IT guy. I've known you for 5 years. Never walked in the building before, but spiky hair, goatee, glasses, a little bit of a gut and a polo. Yeah, I'm the IT guy. They know because they only know that far. Now it's bald white guy.
White guys on this, by the way. So,
but it's always that easy. But I'm well versed in how to elicit these emotional responses. I almost got popped so it would have been horrible, but I got an email for a bacon fest, and I was just like, click, I want to know about it.
Food is a massive.
And I clicked it, and I was just like, oh, I hope that, and thankfully it wasn't, but it could have been. And it's one of those, like, everybody's got their triggers. Everybody's got the thing.
That's how I got 50% of the security team. Is I used a food lure, and I got 50% of the security team.
The no-no is never talk about benefits, but yeah, that's what you're going to get
Well,
caught.
yeah, that
Testing versus what a criminal's allowed to do, that kind of thing.
but
But
you
at the
also
end
have
of
to
the
see
day,
it too. Like I haven't
it's
seen it.
not
Attackers
it's
really
not
do
really the
it.
weakest link.
Yeah.
It's that we are the determiner. We are the ultimate authority of trust. The systems trust who we tell them to trust. The humans make decisions about trust. So we are the only human. It's not that we're the weakest link. We're the trust link. We're the determiner. And so, yeah, if your security program can be completely underdone by one person clicking a link, maybe your security program isn't that great. If your if your process for sending millions of dollars around the world can be, undone by one CFO, make it a signature in a banking app with with no authentication or real quick two-factor calls, and there's no extra process checks. Yeah, your security program sucks.
Well,
Like it's a process problem at that point. It's
yes,
not a
and
human is the weakest link.
right. Well, and you can't fix that with technology, which is to my point. Like, there's no technology involved there that can get that because there's context involved and people.
No, but when CEO has to talk to CFO when it's over a certain risk level, and they have to actually have a human conversation before you send money, the bank in Singapore doesn't get $8 million because Fred calls Bob or whatnot.
But
And
that's what I'm saying.
you want the human in the loop.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we're seeing. I don't know. We're getting into a different debate than what we've been talking about, which I think we've thoroughly covered. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I really don't have too much more. I've definitely said the pieces that I am most passionate about trying to help security people understand. I came into the security community, longer ago than I care to admit. And I always felt like the person who was focused on the human aspects of it, the psychology of it, the business process of it, and those kind of things. And don't get me wrong, I love my ones and zeros and breaking things by a burp suite. But at the end of the day, if all you focus on is the serialization piece and how it works, you're going to miss out on actually helping the business. You're going to miss out on helping the people, and you're going to miss out on continuing to get a good paycheck. So that's the piece that I've been fortunate to in my career really focus on and do well on, and it's served me pretty well. And I want to help other people get there. So this is just a great conversation for having that conversation, if you will.
Yep. No, absolutely. All right. What do you want to plug?
So I have this B-side conference coming up, September 27th. If you happen to be in St. Louis or driving distance, there's lots of cool hotels. If you've never checked out the City Museum, there's all kinds of good reasons to be in St. Louis. If you also want to talk to a bunch of nerds who will absolutely look at this same blog post with you and talk as long or longer about it, come down to WashU. It's a really cool college. St. Louis has a really good security community. If you're local to this area, STLSec every second Wednesday, yes. Reboot Wednesday. And then the other thing I'll post, just because you gave me a second and you haven't shut me up yet, mental health is important. So think of therapy as brushing your teeth and working out. It's hygiene, not an emergency room visit. Get yourself, talk to somebody, please, for your own mental health capability. If you want more information about that, I'll happily have those conversations too. ben.miller@bsidesSDL.org.
Yep. So this is going to go up, I think, next Tuesday. I'm going to go and throw it up so we can continue to promote B-Sides. We talked about this in the last podcast. If you have trouble paying for the B-Sides ticket, let me know. Reach out to me.
Yes.
I will absolutely pay a ticket for you. It's not
Same.
that, that's what I like about B-Sides events or not. The other thing I'm going to mention too is you're talking about St. Louis. I love St. Louis. I love bringing my family to St. Louis. So even if you're within driving distance, come out, go to St. Louis. If you have a family, bring your family because there is a ton of free stuff there. The zoo's free, the science center free. Your family, your wife can take the kids out and go enjoy. There's
or your husband, if you're, come on, let's be inclusive here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. You're absolutely right. Your spouse, I should say your spouse. Your spouse can take the kids, or the kids can go to one of these things, or make a weekend out of it and go Saturday, or come in Friday.
Please
go
do
do it. I mean, it's just a really great town for entertainment for the kids. That I've always brought my family when I go to St. Louis for a conference, and they go enjoy that while I'm doing the actual conference. So as far as family wise goes, it's a great trip, great opportunity. I don't know if the Cardinals are in town.
Oh, I have no idea. It's not October, and it's not the early two. Like there was a time when I had to keep track of freaking Cardinal stuff just because consultant life, you had to be able to talk about the game last night.
Yeah.
I don't really have to do that anymore, and thankfully, like they've declined in capability apparently. So it's like, oh, okay, is baseball still going on? I don't know. I'm waiting for hockey to start back.
Yeah. Cardinals are not in town. They're in Chicago playing the Cubs. So.
All right, go to that game if you want to. B-side Chicago, also a great place. There's B-side wherever you're hearing this podcast at. There's a B-sides nearby. Look it up. Help it. Volunteer. We always need more volunteers. It should be free or cheap. Literally, ours is a donation to get a shirt. We're still going to feed you. We still want you to be there. But if you could spend the $25 to get a shirt, help defray some costs and help somebody else get there. That's the reason why we charge. It's just so we can kind of count who's going to show up. But at the end of the day, I ain't turning anybody away. Please just come hang out and ask questions and be interested and get connected.
Cool. Well, on that note, thank you for coming on to unravel the SharePoint zero-day vulnerability, man.
Or ravel it back up differently, whichever way it worked out.
You better re-serialize that up and maybe fix the issue.
Oh, Jeff with the pun zinger. Love it.
Heck yeah. Beautiful.